So let's talk about working on the business. Now, my story, I had my video production company, and I actually had a pretty pivotal moment where I was very entrenched in the business as the camera guy. And my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, called me out on it. And she said, "You're working all the time. You're staying up late. You don't never go to sleep. You're the weekends, you're traveling, you're this, you're that." So she called me out on it. And we actually moved across the country. I left my office and my employees and moved across the country to work on the systems of my business, and probably read your book again 5 times. And so if someone can't actually move away from the business to get themselves out of the day-to-day, how do they start to think about little by little getting themselves out of the day-to-day?
Well, let me give you a great story and a great example of that, how you do that. And I'm speaking now about Brian Scudamore. And Brian
1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Yep, 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Yeah.
And Brian told the story in an interview we did, in a webinar that we did, that you might want to access, and you can access that. We recorded it. And he told the story about how he came to the point in his small business, his junk business, picking up junk. They were producing about $500,000 in revenue. He had 11 employees. And he came face to face with the fact that he wasn't enjoying himself. There's something wrong with what he was doing. And he realized he didn't know how to lead anyone. He realized he didn't know how to do what he had actually set out to do. He didn't know anything about business. And so he decided to shut it down. Literally, he met with his 11 people and he fired them all.
Wow.
Think about the courage that took. He fired everyone. And he quit and went away, he said, for 3 days to a cabin overlooking the ocean. And in that cabin, he wrote a 1-page vision.
Wow.
Now, Brian tells the story in WTF, and that's the name of the book, which describes the story of what I've just shared with you.
Okay.
Willing to Fail. Everybody should get that book, because the question you're asking is answered by that book. Brian realized he didn't know what he was doing, didn't know how to do what he was doing, and knew that he wouldn't be happy doing what he was doing, no matter how successful it seemed to be. So he decided to start all over again. Now, what
Which takes courage. I think to burn down your business like that is something very few people will do.
But of course. But I'm just trying to demonstrate to you the answer to your question is really making a break with the past. Making a break with the past. And then what he did during those 3 days, he said, he read the E-Myth Revisited 2 times. So he read the E-Myth Revisited 2 times, and the E-Myth Revisited told him exactly what he needed to do. He needed to determine what his primary aim was. He needed to determine what his strategic objective was. He needed to determine what his organizational strategy was. He needed to determine what his management strategy was. He needed to determine what his people development strategy was. And he needed to determine what his systems strategy was. And the minute he could see that, he had a path. So understand, every single person who's listening to us has to understand you need a path. And the path has to define the strategic outcomes you absolutely critically need to possess in order to go beyond not knowing, in order to go beyond the ordinary, in order to go, as Brian Scudamore calls it, from the ordinary to the exceptional, O2E. The ordinary to the exceptional. Now, Brian has taken that mindset and applied it to now 4 more ordinary products, services, all to do with home. Painting a home in 1 day.
Wow.
Painting a home in one day. I said, how do you paint a home in one day? He said, instead of having 2 painters, we have 20 painters. And each of those painters is focused on one thing. And each of them doing that one thing simultaneously. So understand, he saw the system and he turnkeyed it before he even opened his doors. So effectively, I'm saying, whether you own a small company, whether you want to own a small company, whether you've been doing it for 18 years is irrelevant. Everybody gets to start anew.
Yeah.
And you need a path to do that. And so your piece on the path, Chris, is well defined. It starts in year 2. And in year 2, after we've done the dream, the vision, the purpose, the mission, after we've awakened the electricity, the energy, the fusion of our mindset about the difference we're going to make in a very specific world, the next step is the job. And the job is your client fulfillment system. And you're going to go to work on the job while going to work in the job to turnkey the job, just like Brian did, just like so many tens of thousands of readers of my books have done, just as you have done, just as you did in your video business, which you then built and sold, just as you're doing right now in your documentation business. Effectively, you go to work on the sucker to get it to work. Then you can replicate yourself with other people. And when you're able to do that, my God, you're able to grow from a company of 1 to a company of 1,000. That's the critical key.
Now, let me ask you this. I have a theory that the most scalable businesses have the fewest number of roles needed to accomplish a particular task. So, for instance, Brian's painting business, he has 20 painters doing the same thing. So for him, there's a lot of ROI on documenting their processes for a painter to paint. For McDonald's, they've got someone working on the burgers, they've got someone working at the register, and they're able to scale that role infinitely across the country. But for a business that has 1,000 different roles and one person doing each role, there's less ROI on the documentation. So is that something you've seen, that the businesses that scale the fastest have the fewest number of core production roles?
Well, understand there is no business that has 1,000 unique roles in it. So effectively, it's the focus that's needed to reduce the number of roles to the most critical. In short, you're designing a production system. And that production system, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's an online deliverable, whatever it might be, that production system calls for very specific roles to produce it. Now understand, while there are 20 painters, there's only one painting system. So the expansion of the 2-week process of painting your home to be able to deliver it in one day said we have to reduce this to a competency and capability that will enable us to get the job done now. How do we do that? So you understand the dream, the vision, the purpose, and the mission. Launch that passion for discovering what it is you're going to do, why it is you're going to do that, to move you to begin to ask how it is you're going to do that. What are we going to do? We're going to transform the state of small business worldwide. Why are we going to do that? So that we can literally transform the economic reality of small business owners worldwide. How are we going to do that? By emulating the most successful small business on the planet, McDonald's. So we're going to take McDonald's as our model, as absurd as it might seem, See how they did what they actually did to be able to open over 37,000 stores worldwide.
Right. And even beyond McDonald's. And even beyond McDonald's, the explosion of fast casual concepts and coffee shops and this and that is all based on the same mentality of having a production system,
Of course.
System.
Of course.
I'm so glad you brought up.
You wouldn't have Starbucks without it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought up Brian and the painting example. I actually spoke with Cameron Harold a few weeks ago, and he said that he remembered you coming into 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He was the COO, and saying that, wow, I've never seen someone put the eMyth into such a practical application as what you guys have just done with this. So kudos for that.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. And it is wonderful every time I see it.
Yeah.
It brings me immense joy every time I see the breakthrough from a technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure who's created a job for himself or herself, consumed with work, and have lost any idea whatsoever of why they started in the first place other than to make a living. I'm saying if you're there to make a living, you're there for the wrong reason.
Right.
So you got to discover the big reason you're there. What's the difference you're going to make in the world? You follow me?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's where the joy comes from. The joy that comes from seeing Brian doing what Brian has done to create a 400 million plus year enterprise, applying the eMyth religiously to each and every category of work. Replicating it. His employees love it. His leaders love it. His franchisees love it. His customers love it. His bank loves it. Everybody loves it. But Brian didn't do it to get a Ferrari. So when you begin to see the pitch on Facebook of the shiny, bright red car, you got to tell yourself there's something missing in this picture. This ain't what I'm here for. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to become a... You understand what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone who's listening, I think loud and clear, the message here is to start with the dream, start with the vision, start with the purpose and the mission. And Radical You, Michael's project, is the best place that you can go to get that information. So I'll make sure to link to it and everywhere that this video is. Michael, now as someone who's watching this, let's say the fact that they're even watching this, they recognize the importance of documentation, and they're getting started, and they want an operations manual, and they've started to go down this path. Is it a crowdsourced team effort? Is it an individual effort? How do they get it done, and is it ever done?
It's never done because it's in continuous evolution, continuous improvement.
Absolutely.
I've been doing this work for over 40 years, and I'm continually seeing more about how to improve it. 40 plus years, Chris. I'm 82 years old. Understand, there's no absence of passion and enthusiasm for this improbable and impossible thing we set out to do, because it can be continually improved upon. But that's what entrepreneurs do. They don't just settle down and do it. They don't just take their money and go home. They continue creating. Steve Jobs started out in the garage with a dream, with a vision, with a purpose, with a mission, which is best expressed in that commercial that Apple ran at the Super Bowl. If you remember throwing a hammer.
I remember, yeah.
Remember, that's the dream. That's the dream expressed visually. That's the dream expressed passionately. We're those guys who are bringing this great transformation to the planet. Our little product is about to do that. Well, he continued to do that with the iMac, with the iPhone, with the iPad, and on and on and on and on. And you can begin to see how Apple became the first trillion-dollar value company, because it was built upon making a huge difference. Not so Steve could drive a big car. Not so Steve could become a parody of wealth and entrepreneurship. That's disgusting. But so Steve could add this profound impact on everybody's lives. That's what he did. How extraordinary.
Amazing.
That you get to do that.
Yeah.
You at 33, you get to do that.
Right.
Whoever you are, you get to do that.